Welcome to Power Scheming, a podcast highlighting working class community organizers, advocates, and artists in the Midwest. My name is Elle, and today I'm joined by Ybañez, Promo, Missouri's Southwest Regional Organizer. Promo is Missouri's largest LGBTQ+ public policy and advocacy organization, providing resources and education statewide, striving for queer equality and liberation. Missouri has a fraught and rich history of LGBTQ+ oppression and organizing. The state adopted specific anti-sodomy and anti-cross-dressing laws in the mid and late 19th century. Despite state repression and violence, an underground community of LGBTQ+ folks began forming across the state, from city centers in St. Louis and Kansas City to small towns in the southeast and southwest of the state. Queer folks found camaraderie and community, building power through the early 20th century. In 1966, a coalition of gay and lesbian organizations held their first national press conference in Kansas City, Missouri. The following year, Drew Schaefer founded the Phoenix Society for Individual Freedom, the first LGBTQ+ organization in Missouri. On Halloween of 1969, the same year as the Stonewall riots, police raided a gay bar in St. Louis, arresting 9 men in drag. The Mandrake Society, established in 1969, bailed the men out of jail, becoming a leading organization for LGBTQ+ activism in the state. Promo has evolved into its current position as the leader of queer advocacy in Missouri, from origins in the PACE and PrEP organization of the 1980s and 1990s. PrEP focused on privacy rights, reproductive health, queer equality, and repealing the state's sodomy laws in the 1980s. PrEP transitioned into Promo in the 1990s. Promo envisions a Missouri where all folks are free from systemic oppression and discrimination, allowing for free personal expression. Ybañez is Promo Missouri's Southwest Regional Organizer. In addition to organizing with Promo, Rex is the Executive Director of Springfield's citywide tenant union, Springfield Tenants Unite. They are a 3-time Pushcart Prize Nominee, with their poetry being published in Interim Poetics, The Margins, and All My Relations. In December 2022, they found Poets Corner SGF, the local poetry open mic held at the 3rd Place on C Street. Rex has been instrumental in providing affirming spaces for queer artists in Springfield and has inspired many organizers and creatives in this region to advocate for a Springfield that benefits all working class people. Hey Rex, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so psyched that you were able to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honored. I think it's an honor and privilege to be interviewed by people who are hungry for power and change.
Hell yeah. What a way to get started.
Yeah.
So I would love to kind of rewind into what got you involved in the organizing landscape. Was there like a moment or a series of moments that inspired you to begin this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like real quick, I'm Filipino American. What I mean by that is that I'm half Filipino, half American. Like, mom was born in Georgia, dad was born in the Philippines. So like, my parents met in the 80s. Like my dad just he got his degree in physical therapy at Cebu Doctors College in Cebu City in the Philippines, and came to America. He's the only of his family to have come here, like out of like his brothers and sisters. I saw like a lot of like injustice with like my dad working here and like working really hard, and then seeing like the American dream fail him. Just like, seeing him like go through like a bunch of weird shit, being not native to the United States, like learning our customs and like how we do things. I think that's like kind of just sets, like in the back of my mind, things that led me to where I am today. Shakespeare says, and what is it? What is past is prologue? So I mean, other things that, like just like the way I was treated in school too. Rural Midwest town, very conservative, white bread, So that's in Bolivar. That's where I grew up. I was born in Clinton, Missouri, though, but I grew up in Bolivar. I don't regret my childhood at all, but growing up in like that kind of context was definitely difficult, right? Just for various reasons, obviously. Religion's also like a very complicated thing for me too. And I grew up Christian. Like my dad is Catholic, my mom's Baptist, and I grew up with both, and it was very confusing because every Christian believes in God different ways, and I'm like, well, and so like Christian, like I just think like Christianity also like still plays into my life because I think there is still like brilliant Christian thinkers like of the past. I think of what's his name, Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton was a really good one. He was like a Trappist monk, so like he like didn't have like where do you find monks in monasteries? Yeah, I'm like thinking of words like yeah, like they don't have like a traditional monastery. They just like seclude themselves and like find Jesus that way. Like that's what they do. And Thomas Merton in particular like lived that way. And like saw Jesus through like that sort of lifestyle. But he also wrote letters to like famous authors and like famous people. Like people were like interested in like, well, what does Thomas Merton think about like this situation? Like people went to Thomas Merton, and Thomas Merton is just kind of like a confidant. I will say this is gonna come off like kind of heavy, but I definitely still like envy the person that I could be sometimes in the way of like maybe I don't have to get involved because of like all the work that we do in this. It's exhausting. And it's definitely more exhausting when we do it alone.
Yeah.
And we act in Lone Ranger mode and just like can't trust anyone with our ideas or, like handling like a task or a role. I still envy like, having, if I didn't have a conscience, then I would definitely not be in this work. But gosh darn it, I have a conscience.
Damn the conscience.
Damn it. I know. It's so annoying. It is not annoying. It is good. Like it is a good thing. I'm happy that I care about things. Going back to things that, like started, like making my my brain, like perceive things in a different way. I would say like poetry is one of those things. I grew up like being very interested in like storytelling and like doing that through drawing, like writing my own stories, being with certain friends who had like stop motion cameras, and we do like claymations together and like tell stories that way, or like reading books, video games. I feel like video games are like a form of reading. Like if you like are playing one with I'd say, like with dynamic characters and, like a very engaging storyline, just like good narrative stuff, right? I think it's like because of stories that, we are all stories. I always go back to that. Like, I like saying, we are great fiction, and that is truth rearranged, and sometimes, like it's also true that life is stranger than fiction, and I feel like that is very much my life. I'm like, what the fuck?
How did you like discover poetry? What was that like for you?
Dr. Seuss.
Really? Hell yeah.
And I didn't really like think of it as poetry as a kid. I didn't really think of it very, very much of it, but I've always had this fascination with Dr. Seuss, and like. So like people like want to talk shit on Dr. Seuss because like he was like racist and like stuff like that. But I love redemption arcs. This is like kind of like the thing is that like he apologized and like like made friends with like Japanese people, and that's like kind of what humanized him and made his like change his like mind on like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be drawing this shit. Like so I mean, yeah, people are like easily, like they're ready to like cancel Dr. Seuss, and I'm like, but he was redeemable, like, is like my thing. And I think that's like another factor that I consider into the work that I do, is that we're all redeemable. Like, we can be changed and then see, you know, like this greater good come out of our communities. And I think that's great, you know, storytelling material.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome. Yeah, I can definitely see how that would inform the work that you're doing now, especially like with the deep canvassing, because like kind of the whole point of that is changing narratives and provide like facilitating that transition and that redemption.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, the way I understand a deep canvas is like the way a normal organizer would, you know, understand a deep canvas. But I think of it like more so like someone's opinion is like a stake in the ground, and the least a deep canvas can do is lift the stake out of the ground. Where it goes, who knows? Like, you could have like a really good persuasion conversation at the door, and then, you know, like, you want the stake to be planted, you know, like closer to where, you know, like for a favorable result, right? But it is storytelling. It is narrative. It is what narratives have you been listening to about a particular thing? What are they saying? Well, we want to tell you the truth is, you know, what we're doing in the work that I'm doing. So
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but the dominant narratives that we live under are all crafted by those in power. And it's like redrawing narratives through workers and through just like, bringing the power to create narratives and create the like structures that we live under back to the people that are forced to live under them.
yeah, absolutely. I just like, that's like a huge thought you just shared. Yeah, it's those in power get to write history, right? That means we have to battle and become victors ourselves so that we can tell the narrative, and our
Hell
narrative's the
yeah.
right narrative, so that we can stop being gaslit by the other side.
And so like it sounds like poetry was like very storytelling in general, but that evolved into poetry for you was very influential in how you view interaction and power. What was it that made you really take that first scary step?
So it's so funny that I can like look at like my old organizing and then realize like I was doing field work. I was like taking surveys, you know, like asking people's opinions about certain things. Like, my original goal was to start open mics for poets, because I was going to all these other open mics and I would do poetry and it wasn't landing. Because all these open mics are at bars, you know, like it's like not the setting,
Not the vibe,
not the
unfortunately.
vibe. Now I could always count on the Flea being an okay night to do poetry, because like the Flea at one point in time had the best open mic.
I have heard this about the flea. I'm bummed I missed the glory days.
It was most glorious. It was a rockin' time. Like, people would get on accordions, people would read their poems, people would act, you know, people would do a dance, you know, like people would do a lot of
Variety show open mic.
it literally was, you know, like anyone could sign up, and it wasn't like, you know, what do you say? Like, not like a showcase at all. It was a showcase, but it was just weird because it's the Flea and it's great. A lot of my local friends, you know, kind of like erupted out of the Flea too. Like, this would have been back in like 2016, 2018. And then, you know, the pandemic killed the open mic. They were just like, we don't want to keep doing this anymore. So we were like, okay, well, that sucks. And open mics have never been the same since.
Really?
It was like a fucking wonderful experience. I was like this close to being like its last host, which kind of like inspired me even more to like continue like finding my own thing and like creating like a poetry event. So I mean, I did open mics based on like all this like information going to other open mics and like, oh, like I'm gonna start my thing here like in this bookstore, which my first one was at Uriel's Unusual Bookstore here on C Street. It lasted a couple of months and stuff happened with the store. I think like they got broken into and like a bunch of stuff was stolen and like messed them up really good. So we stopped doing that. I continued to do another open mic that I started, would have been like spring 2019, at a bookstore called Pagination Bookshop. And that was a fantastic event. And then pandemic hit and we just like stopped doing that altogether. So like the pandemic, like I think it's like one of those things I keep coming back to because I was like really trying to build something really powerful and cool in my hometown because I felt like it needed this. I formed with Keisha McMillan the Artist Empowerment Collective, where we did a yearly event called Show Your Colors. And this was a showcase of BIPOC artists. We got to feature me, we got to feature Keisha, we got to feature friends like Ashley Loren, Corey Naden, just like other BIPOC artists, like we were like buddies and we're like, all right, let's do an art show together. And like, it was really important to us, but it didn't seem like really important to other people at the time. Like, and we formed the idea, the concept of it formed after the murder of George Floyd. And, like things were kind of like popping off like everywhere around that time. And we wanted to, like honor ourselves as people of color to come together and share like our own types of storytelling with the arts. I think art is also a form of storytelling. I mean, like the cave paintings in Altamira in Spain, like that's storytelling. They might be pictures, but so are picture books. Picture books, like are just like images with like really simple writing, and like that's what cave painting is. Like it all goes back to story.
With being a poet and being a creative and like feeling that very deeply inside of you, how does that inform your work as an organizer? Like how does that inform the way that you like interact with people that in the community or with your fellow organizers or in a leadership position?
I think that poetry is something I gravitate towards due to having a lot of empathy. And I will say one of my favorite literary figures, his name is Jorge Luis Borges. He's one of my favorite literary figures. I'm paraphrasing, he once said that good poetry isn't always understood in the moment of being read, but at the same time you feel some type of transformation happen inside of you as you're reading it. So it's like not always understanding like what poetry is saying, but you feel something, like you feel like a metamorphosis or like the beginning of one, like when you read a really good poem. I think that's something that I gravitate towards, like I feel like the world is full of feelings that we can't necessarily explain. John Keats, he's a romantic poet. He had this idea called negative capability, where poets were like damned to try to write about the ineffable. And that's, I think, like the crux of it all is like, I think everyone feels impossible feelings at all, and like we're seeing that even more so as we advance as a society, that we all share the same feelings, but feelings are getting a lot more complicated and confusing. And I think the other side uses this to, like disarm us and like divide us. And I think like I have like, it's like, it kind of goes back to like this idea of, like Christianity has like affected my life forever. And like, I think like poetry is like a type of sacred vocation.
So with getting Poets Corner started, what got you specifically involved in stun or in promo?
Yeah, that's really funny. So Poets Corner came to be in December 2022. And that was me coming out of a relationship. That was me trying to come to a world where we could not have to mask, in public, which I mean, we probably should still be masking, honestly, but I'm not going to get into it. Like, anyways, but we could do things in the community again, right? Like it wasn't like, all right, no open mics anymore. People could like go out and try to resume like what their normal life used to be or whatever. Like, so I mean, like that was like me coming, like I said, out of a relationship, just trying to, like find myself again, trying to, connect with my community, and Poets Corner came out of that. Stun started during the pandemic in 2020. People were getting laid off and furloughed, and people just like didn't have jobs, but rent was still due. There were a group of tenant leaders that came together and begged for some of that COVID relief money to be given to, I think, hundreds of families around that time who were like without work because they were about to get evicted, and that's scary. Like, oh, this virus, could potentially kill us, but at the same time, I'm being evicted from my house. Like, what do I do? Like, that's scary as fuck. That is terrifying. And so, enter V. Sanchez. That is literally a person that, affected by that as a single mom. And she led some tenant leaders to, urge city council, I think it was city council, to like help like hundreds of families with like the remaining money of like or some of that COVID money. I think it was $500,000, which is huge. And that this, I wasn't even involved at this point. I would have came in when I started doing poetry open mic again, Poets Corner. When I was doing Poets Corner, that's when I basically was like agreeing to like, okay, I will do stuff in stun because my friend Jaybird is someone that I met at open mic. See, there's always like these red threads. I promise. Oh man, that's how I met Jay. Oh my god, it would have been 2018. I met Jay. It was like spring. It would have been like May 2018. I met Jay for the first time, and like I was like, wait, there's another musician in this bar right now at the Flea who's a person of color. I'm like, no fucking shit, I have to go talk to him because it's like so white here in Springfield. Like, I'll just say it, like, and everyone knows that. Like, but it was so exciting. I'm like, okay, we got to play. What do you do? He's like, I do drums. I'm like, I play bass, and then we just like fuck around on stage and like jam. It was so fun. We just like were dealing with a lot of like personal stuff, and then pandemic happens. We don't talk for a little bit. Yeah, he's like calling me at least once a month when I'm like in this like really weird relationship with this woman like during the pandemic. He's just like, what you know about power? I'm like trying to understand, like my relationship to housing and like having a home and having that security. And I got out of that relationship and had to become a tenant again. Now I fucking get it. I moved in with a friend, and the house that I moved in is the same one that I've been in, these last 4 years. Couldn't have done that, without having that friend there, to like keep me there and like not even be on the lease until like the lease renewal came up, and it was like, okay, we might as well put me on the lease, like I'm in a good position. But then they raise the rent, because another person's living there so they can, pay more money, and they raised it by $200. People get, like rent raises, like of like 50, maybe like 25, and like that's still a lot. That's still like that's fucking money. That's like that's a lot of money. But like $200, I shit you not. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do it. And like, I've been doing it because they haven't raised the rent since, which I'm like grateful for. Oh my God, because rent is crazy right now. I don't know what stats are, but back in, I want to say 2024, Might have been 2023. It was one of those years, like the average rent for a 2-bedroom house or a 2-bedroom apartment was like 1,100 or maybe 900 back then. I don't know. Like time and money and inflation like is fucked. Another thing that informed me is that like I came out of like that really weird dynamic of being like abused in this like relationship to like being my own person, wanting to like create community out of poetry. And so like essentially what happened is that I get through another weird relationship and a pandemic, and like I'm trying to find community again. And I'm also like getting like sad that as I'm like building community, like I'm not finding other Asians in like my community. And I guess it all comes to a thing that I love to call self-interest. I wanted to create a world, be physically responsible for like manipulating my immediate reality and make it precious to other people by using poetry as a vehicle.
Something that did like surprise me when getting into these organizing circles is the like focus on self-interest and like the divergence between like selfishness and self-interest, and also like self-sacrifice as well. So like for listeners that are not like haven't gone through a self-interest training or haven't like reflected on that for themselves, how would you define self-interest? And like,
What do you want in the world? How are you going to do anything about getting the thing that you want? Let's go back to me being a poet again. My original dream was to be like a published poet and like get a book and like be like one of those like dudes that you would find in like poetry books like years beyond like I wanted to be like a dead poet, like sleeping, like in the pages, like, oh, you've come and read my work, have you, once again? Like, that's what I wanted. That's what I legit wanted for a really long time. And I think I still kind of do want that, but it's not my self-interest anymore, like, and I think self-interest can change, and I think that changes through conversation, and it happens through deep canvassing. And that's how I have to think about like Jay, like talking to me on the phone when I was in a really weird relationship and the pandemic, and he was deep canvassing me when he was calling me, like checking in. I was giving him like deep canvassing practice, like, and I just like wasn't thinking of it like that, and he probably thinks of it that way. Like, if I'm talking about Jay has a reason for everything, even though if we don't know it. Jay has like infinite wisdom about everything. I will say that. But yeah, I organize because of Jay. I would not be in this if it weren't for Jay.
reflecting back on where you were at whenever Jay started canvassing you, what would you say to the Rex then?
I say I need to break up with this woman and like become a tenant quicker so that I can get activated and do more, like a lot earlier than I did. Leave your girlfriend, like become a tenant, get to work immediately. Like maybe we'd be further along, but maybe not. Like maybe I would actually tell myself like this may not know anything to you now, but then you're going to go on friend's podcast and then, like have a revelation about Jay in real time and discover that he was deep canvassing you this whole time, and that's how you got in this work. Yeah.
So, dream policies that you could implement right now in Springfield and right now in Missouri, what would those be?
So when Promo and the voters of Missouri defeat Amendment 3, I would like to see Springfield's promo base get to a place where it could start fighting for itself locally so that it can win SOGI protections, and that's sexual orientation, gender identity, that was taken out of the non-discrimination clause in our city over a decade ago. And this affects people looking for jobs. This affects tenants looking for homes. It affects a lot of people, and I think we should fix that. So that's what I want for Springfield. Statewide, I would love to see a lift of the rent control ban. And I think how we get that is having a lot more economic fights. So like not even doing like policy work and like working, like with city council and stuff like that. I mean like getting people in apartment buildings to like have deep canvases with their neighbors and like talk about the issues. Like, you notice this happened too? Maybe we should talk to our neighbors to see what's up. And then maybe they want to unionize and, make demands of their landlord. And if that landlord doesn't, meet those demands, then escalation happens. Maybe there's a rent strike. Maybe tenants win. Maybe that's what we need to continue doing is like having more economic battles where we like are calling out landlords and have them, like, I think that's how we do it. I think like if we fight these economic fights and defeat landlords in like powerful ways with rent strikes or, like we could, create a template of like what other places could be doing. Kansas City has, I want to check on this, but I know they won 2 rent strikes in like the last 2 years. And I think they have a third union that has either started or won their own rent strike. I have to double check that, but I mean, that is like fascinating. We could be doing that too. We have no reason not to. And that's like the militant organizer, like talking right now. And like the militant organizer, like, so I'm like 2 organizers. I'm the militant one, and I'm the one that talks about like radical joy and radical hospitality. But all of it is like militant. And I think that goes back to self-interest. If like you don't have clear self-interest, if you don't know what you want and like don't know why you want that or what you would do to fight for it, then keep thinking. Keep thinking about self-interest. If you're not clear about it, then you won't win anything. I think I've always wanted to like just continue using my platforms to talk about the things. And I want people to care about poetry, and I want people to care about housing. It's just like, I feel like I'm everyone's like older brother, and I'm like, you need to care, like, and if you don't care, then fuck you. Like, even though I love you, but fuck you for not caring. Like, it's because I think is like what it comes down to is that I love deeply. I'm a poet. Poets feel deeply. I am mentally ill. I feel deeply all the time. Like I'm not just always like happy or sad. It's like a conglomeration of emotions, that I feel all at once. But like I get jazzed up talking about housing and, see people, like get mobilized and then organized to do a thing. When they get to do that, they get to finally see what I see, and that's the revolution happening in real time. You get to see people like change. You get to see like material conditions change, sometimes, like if that's what you're fighting for and that's what you organize around, then win the material condition. It's 2026 and people are still homeless. Like, remember when, I guess I remember when it was like the 90s and people were like, what do you want the future to look like? And kids in the 90s were like, I want to see, like, jetpacks and like flying cars and all this shit. And I was like thinking, like back then, like, well, 2026 is the future. Here in 2026, we don't got shit. And I'm hungry. I'm so hungry, dude. So hungry for change. I'm so hungry for what people have that I don't have. Like, and I feel like I should have too. Like, and I'm hungry to change the narrative that we need to like fight each other to have those things when we need to be fighting the people who own the means of production.
Do you have any promo projects or personal creative endeavors or stun events or organizing that you're working on?
Deep canvassing that I'm doing to talk to people about Amendment 3 and persuading people to reconsider how they view trans people and trans kids. So, I mean, like, that's something that we're going to be doing weekly after 4th of July week. We'll see how that goes. Could always use more help and more volunteers. So if you're listening, you're interested and want to get to know more, please contact. You know, we're happy to have more volunteers and to build stronger queer and trans power for our liberation.
Hell yeah. Where can people find information about that?
They can go to promomissouri.org. They can email me at rex, R-E-X, at promomissouri.org. You guys can find me on Instagram, like The Literary Alchemist is my Instagram handle. Reach out to me, talk to me. We need more people in the revolution, and we can't do it alone. So I would be happy to like speak to you, share stories with you, maybe hopefully make you feel more passionate about the things that you love by the time we get having a conversation out of the way. Go to Poets Corner. Poets Corner is every second Friday at the Third Place. Starts at 7, ends at 8:30 usually. Sign up though starts at 6:30, so you want to show up at 6:30. It's just like a nice way to like get there, sit with people, like decompress before you have to like go and do anything. Yeah, it's such a great event, you know, led by queer and trans people. I wish I could go to it all the time still, even though I don't run it anymore. But when I go, it's magic. It's like more magical than I left it.
Thank you so much for coming in today. It was genuinely just like such a joy to get to chat with you. You're just like such a big, like genuine inspiration for so many of like my peers in organizing. It just means a lot to get to spend this time with you.
Thank you for tolerating me. This was really fun. I just kind of like letting loose and talking about the things. So this was really special to me. And like I said, it's an honor and privilege to be interviewed by people who are hungry for power and change.
This has been another episode of Power Scheming. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Rex for joining me today. You can follow them on Instagram at The Literary Alchemist and find their poetry in Interim Journal and Asian American Writers Workshop magazine. Find more information about Promo Missouri's work, find them on social media at Promo Missouri, or visit their website, promomissouri.org. Take action by visiting mobilize.us/Promo Missouri. Power Scheming is produced by Elle Fabro. Music is by Kevin Tillery, Beth Smith, Elle Fabro, and Ben Isaacs. Cover art is by Jordan Metz. Production and audio support is provided by Isaac Protiva. Research for this episode is from the State Historical Society of Missouri. Subscribe to Power Scheming wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Elle Fabro. Until next time.